now, without any further delay, I would like to turn today's Partner Academy Live webcast, SharePoint 2010 and BizTalk Server 2009, Better Together, over to your first presenter, Raul Garg. He is Senior Product Manager. Raul, you now have the floor.
Oh, hi. Thanks, Kali, and hello and welcome everyone to the presentation today. I'm Rahul. I'm the Senior Product Manager for Microsoft at Redmond in the Enterprise Applications Platform division. I also look after the Global Virtual TS program for Microsoft, especially in the application platform space. And this presentation today is second in the series of presentations that we are having for our virtual TSs worldwide. Because there was so much interest in this presentation, we decided to extend this to our partners and the internal Microsoft groups as well. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Tommaso and Wesley. Tommaso and Wesley work for, Motion 10, which is one of our virtual TS partners from Europe. And Wesley is a senior SharePoint consultant with Motion 10, and Tommaso is the senior BizTalk consultant with Motion 10. And together they have done a whole swag of implementations using SharePoint and BizTalk together. One of the main objectives of today's presentation is to actually show you the power of using both these products, SharePoint and BizTalk together. Often I get asked, that SharePoint is a great tool with fantastic user interface used widely across the world. But how do I connect multiple backend systems, especially when you are talking about organizations where SOA is in place and you want to use it in an agile and dynamic way? Well, today's session should help you with those kind of scenarios and much more. On that note, I would like to hand it over to Wesley and Tommaso. Thanks. Over to you, Wesley and Tommaso.
Thank you, Raul, for the introduction. My name is Wesley Bakker. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction into SharePoint 2010, what's new. I'll then hand over to Tommaso for BizTalk and the Enterprise Service Bus, and then we'll give you a demonstration, a use case. So let's start first with a little bit about Motion 10. Motion 10 is a system integrator. We have a lot of customers worldwide. We help with integrating SQL Server, BizTalk, SharePoint, and all the other backend solutions. The agenda, SharePoint 2010, business connectivity services inside SharePoint 2010, Microsoft Enterprise BizTalk Server, ESB for SharePoint, and a business case. Let's start with SharePoint 2010. SharePoint 2010 is an evolved version of Microsoft Office SharePoint Server and Windows SharePoint services. We now have the Microsoft SharePoint Foundation 2010, which is the replacement for WSS, and Microsoft SharePoint Server 2010. Very important to note on this slide at the bottom is that Windows Server 2008 x64 only and Windows 7 or Vista. So the development team can now actually deploy SharePoint on their development on their desktops and start developing locally. SharePoint 2010 is built on top of the ASP.NET 3.5 Service Pack 1 framework, and the browser clients, Microsoft Word client and Outlook clients connect to the top layer. This is the new SharePoint Pie actually, and this gives you a little bit of an overview of what's inside SharePoint 2010. First we have the sites, the team sites, collaboration sites, where people can work together. And the next part is the communities. There's a lot of extensive blogging possibilities right now inside SharePoint 2010. You can use tagging, for example, and tag clouds. We still have content, enterprise content management, web content management inside SharePoint. Search is really extended, fast implementation. Very new is the insights, where Performance Point Server is actually included inside the SharePoint services. And we have the composites, and the composites is the part where we connect to our backend system and create composite applications that really connects and empowers the people who use SharePoint. Here's a list of what's new in SharePoint 2010. I will not hit all, explain you some of the things I'm really excited about. First of all, it's the user interface. It's really improved, very fast, it's fluent. You'll see that in the demonstration later on. Second point, which I'm really excited about, is the better tools for developers. It's a lot easier to develop for SharePoint right now inside Visual Studio 2010. And there's no need for any third-party tools any longer. You can deploy, debug right from within Visual Studio 2010. Another really nice thing is the improvements to lists. You can enable large lists, for example, and you can set thresholds for large lists. Enhanced support for workflow applications. You can design workflows inside Visio and export them to your SharePoint designer. So it's a great way to get your business connected with workflows. And a very important one is sandbox solutions. You can now use partially trusted code inside your SharePoint farm. But today we're going to focus on the evolving story of integrating SharePoint. There we go. So business connectivity services, what it is actually the business data catalog on Anabolics. You can connect to backend systems like databases, Windows Communication Foundation web services, or any .NET connectivity assembly you create yourself. The business data connectivity service is the layer between your external lists, for example, and your backends. Very important is that it's part of the SharePoint Foundation. It comes with your OS, and you have create, update, and delete right out of the box. So how does this all work? It's all centered around the external content type. You can define an external content type inside SharePoint Designer or inside Visual Studio, and you can then describe the schema and the properties of your content type. You can use this content type right from within SharePoint as an external list, or from your Office client and the workspace and the SharePoint workspace. So it already lies on the external content type, which we'll demonstrate later on. Another important part of the business connectivity service is authentication. There are 3 ways to authenticate the request. Very important. The first one is pass-through. Pass-through will use the account of the currently logged on user to get to the backend. Especially with, for example, getting data out of a SQL Server, you can really use the account of the current user and also then use the authorization inside SQL Server to make sure that your end user will not be able to get results he's not authorized for. The other option you have is refer to self, also known as the application account. You can create one application account and your business connectivity service runtime will run under the application account. Inside, for example, SQL Server or your web service, you just give rights to the application account. And last but definitely not least is the single sign-on authentication. You can use the secure storage to store credentials for your end users, and as soon as the end user connects to SharePoint and then through BCS to the external data source, it will look into the secure storage if it has some credentials for this current user. If it doesn't, it will show you in a user form which asks for your username and password, for example. So you can really get to your backend in 3 ways. 2 solution types. When we go back a little bit up to slides, we can connect to, for example, a database, a web service, or a connectivity assembly. When you want to connect to the database or to a web service, you can very easily use SharePoint Designer to create your external content type, which we'll demonstrate later on. If If you'd like to write your own connectivity layer, your own interface, you can use Visual Studio. And Visual Studio has a template out of the box, so you can just create a new business data connectivity services layer, and you'll get a template with a service in it already. All you have to do is adjust your service. And if you would like to get simple, you can use SharePoint Designer. That's it for now. I would now like to give the floor to Tommaso, my colleague, and he'll introduce you to BizTalk Server.
Hi, I'm Tommaso, and I'm going to tell something about the Microsoft ESB BizTalk Server. In this part, I'm going to explain what is an ESB, why do you need one, and how does it work. What you see in integration between applications is that the application is built point-to-point, and over time these interfaces become more and more complex because each system can have a large number of connections. So you get redundant logic, it doesn't scale very well, and it lacks visibility, so you easily get spaghetti. The business impact for an organization is that it is difficult to change an interface, but also it's difficult to change an application. So one technique often used to solve these problems is an enterprise service bus. And an enterprise service bus is a pattern to create a framework for service-oriented architecture, or SOA. So what is an ESB? The main purpose of an ESB is to provide a mediation layer between the service consumer and the service provider. It provides common reusable services like, for example, the transformation of data or the conversion of a transport protocol, like, for example, from HTTP to message queue or to file. You can do the orchestration of processes, so one generic place for error handling and repairing, for example, the message. Another great advantage is that when a service provider or a service provider changes, the client doesn't need to be aware of the change because the mediation layer or the service bus can modify that configuration without changing the connection to the client. So how does it exactly work? The ESB toolkit provides a set of services to enable a more dynamic way of processing message. So when a message arrives at the ESB, it arrives on an on-ramp. And at the on-ramp, an itinerary or a routing or a routing slip is added to the message. An itinerary is a piece of metadata that describes the path through the ESB. So, for example, a message is transformed to another type. The endpoint of the message is determined. The message is routed to the endpoint, and the response message is returned to the client. Okay, what is exactly an itinerary? So the itinerary is a routing slip, and the development of the itinerary can be done in Visual Studio. So each element in the itinerary represents an action, and the first element of the itinerary is an on-ramp, and this is the location where the message is received inside the ESB. After that, a message can be transformed or it can be routed, or, for example, an orchestration can be called. The off-ramp is the last element, or can be the last element, and it sends the message out of the bus, for example, to a web service or a message queue or a file. When you deploy an itinerary, you can deploy it as an XML file, or you can deploy it directly in an itinerary store. So what are ESB resolvers? Resolvers provide a way for dynamically resolving service metadata. And within a resolver, you can, for example, determine at runtime which itinerary is needed for the message when it enters the ESB. And out of the box are various technologies supported. So you have UDI, you have XPath, or, for example, the business rule. So next, I'm going to do a small demo. In this demo, we are going to request the status of one or more containers by calling the web services of the container terminals. The container terminals are going to check in their database if they have data of the requested containers. The response messages are going to be aggregated inside the ESB, and the aggregated response message is going to send back to the client. For this example, we're going to use the scatter-getter pattern. Now, you can find this pattern inside the development kit of Visual Studio. And for this demo, we have made some small changes. For example, we have generated a web service, and that web service is going to be used as an on-ramp for the ESB. So I'm now going to switch to our development environment. First, I'm going to show the development environment. And for this demo, we have created schemas, maps, orchestrations, business rules, and itineraries. Well, we don't have time to show all or everything from the solution, so I'm going to highlight the most important parts. Now, first of all, I'm going to show the message or the schema that describes the message from the client. And this is a container info request. Here you can specify a terminal name. So if you know on which terminal the containers are, you can here say what the terminal name is. You also can enter the container ID. Next, I'm going to show the aggregated containers message, and this is the result message from the ESB to the client. And in this message, you have the terminal name and the containers that are found in the database. Also, I'm going to show some business rules. So we have created some business rules for this demo. We're going to resolve dynamically at runtime which terminals are going to be called from the ESB. So when in the client message, if the terminal name equal to all, the ESB is going to look at all the terminal web services, and in this business rule, you can see the terminal names and the web service addresses. So I have three business rules here. I have a business rule when the terminal name is equal to all. Some other rules that are going to be fired if the terminal name is equal to terminal 1. Only this address is going to be resolved. Or when the terminal name is equal to 2, the address is resolved from the other terminal. So these business rules I'm going to call from the orchestration. Let me show you illustration. So when this organization is the broker orchestration. The broker orchestration receives the message from the ESB. Then it's going to call the business rule engine. It gets the addresses from the business rule engine and loops through the web service addresses. And when that is going to call per web service or per web service another orchestration that's going to call the web service. And because this orchestration is not going to call the web service, but it is handled by another orchestration, because of this coupling, it can call the web services simultaneously because it doesn't have to wait for an answer. So the other orchestration is going to call the web service, going to, in the next part, it receives the answers from the other orchestration. It's going to aggregate the results, the response messages, and it's going to send the result message back to the ESB database. So this is the orchestration part. Next I'm going to show the itinerary. Well, the itinerary is pretty simple. The first element is the ESB on-ramp. And when I'm looking at the properties with an ESB on-ramp, you can enter the BizTalk application name, so where which application the message is received, and you can enter on-ramp, or sorry, the receive port, and that is the port that receives the message. Next, I'm going to show the itinerary service. Itinerary service is, in our case, a custom orchestration. So when I select the properties, you can see that's an orchestration extender. You can also do messaging directly in the receive pipeline, but we're using a custom orchestration. So, and you can also select here the name of the orchestration. Next, going to generate a web service with the BizTalk Web Service Publishing Wizard. And I'm going to publish the web service to that I can use it as an on-ramp for the ESB. So I'm going to publish the schemas as a web service. And I'm going to use schemas that I've developed in Visual Studio. First, I'm going to, in this pane, I can change the name. So I'm going to, for example, let's say I have a container service. And as a method, I can say get containers. And specify the message from the client. Well, this is I've just shown you. So that is a container info request. And as a response, I'm going to send back the aggregated response message. And check that. Select it here. Select here the aggregated containers schema. I can enter a namespace for the web service. Now, for example, ocean10.com. I can enter the location in ES. So, for example, scatter. And here I can enter the application name, the BizTalk application name. So what you can do is you can automatically generate a receive location. And I'm going to select here is our BizTalk application name, and that is motion10 scatter. Next, I can create the web service. I'm not going to do that because we already have prepared a web service. Sorry, let's see here. So at last, I'm going to show you the BizTalk Server Administration Console. And in our BizTalk application, I'm going to change the generated receive location because you have to change some properties, and what we have generated is a two-way container service. And in the receive pipeline, I have to select a pipeline that can add an itinerary to a message. So I select here the itinerary select receive. And at last, the last thing I have to do is to enter the name of the itinerary that's what is going to be used, and that's the process getter. So this is the BizTalk demo. What Wesley is going to do, he's going to do the SharePoint stuff. He's going to call I've generated, and he's going to show how it all fits together. The last item I want to show you is a wrap up, and just let me select slide for you. So that's what are the benefits to wrap it up? What are the benefits? Why want to use BizTalk ESB? It's easier to reuse the services. Therefore, yeah, you have lower operational costs. You can adapt faster to changes because if a service provider changes, the logic of the client doesn't have to be changed. And you have also have one place for exception handling, so it's better visible what happens inside the bus, and it's also highly extensible because you can easily add some new features to it. So that was the BizTalk part, and here's Wesley again for the SharePoint.
So, hi all. So Thomas has showed us the BizTalk part, and I'm going to show you how we use that in one of our cases with a customer. But first, head back to SharePoint just for a little while. BCS Business Connectivity Services Challenges. Although BizTalk, the BCS, the Business Connectivity Services, is very great and a big enhancement above the business data catalog in 27, we still have some challenges, and one of those is the one-to-one connections. For an external content type, I can only select one backend data source. So in our example, where we have two terminals, we would have to create two external content types. One for containers from Terminal 1 and one for containers from Terminal 2. So that's not a great solution, so we have to start with Visual Studio and create our own layer, start coding. which is okay. It's nice you have the option, but it's certainly something you would really like to avoid. The other problem is request compositions and result aggregations. So as soon as I request from two terminals, a result from two terminals, from within SharePoint Designer, I do not have the option at first. That's the first problem. And the second one is that from within Visual Studio, I have to create my own asynchronous web request code to send requests to two terminals, wait for the result, use something like a mutex, or to wait for these results to come back, and then aggregate these results myself. Another one, the business rules. Business rules, like Tommaso showed you, when a request comes in for terminal all, we go to two terminals in our example, but when it comes in for terminal one, we only go for one terminal. It's not configurable inside SharePoint Designer. So again, we would have to create something in Visual Studio, write our own code, and it becomes a little bit difficult to manage. Another example, another challenge is monitoring. Of course, we can create our own code again, write our own classes to insert some monitoring, but it's still difficult, and monitoring, it's always difficult, like what data would you like to monitor? And as soon as business needs change, you probably like to monitor some different counters. So it would be very easy if we could use the monitoring, the BOM from BizTalk. But BCS altogether, when you create your own Visual Studio project and start coding all these one-to-one connections and result aggregations, you end up again with a lot of spaghetti code. So what's the solution? One of these solutions could be to use the BizTalk Enterprise Service Bus to just aggregate our results and compose our requests to our backend systems. In that case, we would just have one web service, the one Tommaso already showed us how to deploy. We have one web service for SharePoint. SharePoint simply calls that one web service, and the Enterprise Service Bus takes care of all the further handling of our requests. In our case, we go to Terminal 1, Terminal 2, aggregate the result, do some monitoring, have some error handling, for example, and it will all be configurable inside the Enterprise Service Bus from BizTalk. So the Enterprise Service Bus takes care of the following business connectivity service challenges. First of all, one-to-one connections to backend system. Request compositions. It can compose our requests to different terminals in different ways. Terminal 1 can use system number 1. Terminal 2 can use system number 2. Maybe a completely different web service, but BCS, the ESB, will compose our request the right way. Result aggregation. As soon as it comes back, the ESB will aggregate the results. You have a business rules engine. Thomas already showed us. You have business activity monitoring. So ESB actually solves all these challenges for the business connectivity services, which is a great orchestration. Let's head over to the use case, the business case. Container management, we've already used these terms a little bit throughout the presentation. What's the architecture? Architecture is pretty simple. From within SharePoint business connectivity services, we send a single request to the Enterprise Service Bus. The bus will send two requests, one to Terminal 1 and one to Terminal 2, to ask for containers. Terminals respond both. BizTalk will aggregate the results and will send back a single result to the SharePoint BCS. And that's the architecture. So right now I'm going to switch screens again and give you a demo of how it all works. So there we are. As Tommaso deployed the web service, he's going to close up some screens. Here we go. As Tommaso deployed the web service, it's available. Let's have a look at it. in IIS, and I've added some methods. The classes generated are partial, so I can generate methods if I want. Here we are, we got these get all containers, get container by ID, get container from terminal by ID, and get containers. And I'm first going to show you what the results should look like. The idea is that our business connectivity services will create an external content type called containers. When a request is being sent, we have two terminals, one in Rotterdam, one in New York, and the BCS will automatically go to BizTalk, and BizTalk will hit both servers to get all items. Just wait a little sec. It's cold. It has to start running. Here we go. We're getting requests from the service bus, and right here in the result we have the containers from Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. We can then use, for example, view item, view a single item. Again, you'll notice that these requests will be sent to the terminals, and the terminal will respond with an answer. So let's say, for example, we'd like to change an item, say the minimum temperature. We can simply click Edit, hit -10, and hit Save again. If we get back to our terminals, we'll see that an update request will be sent to terminal, and the terminal will then take care of the update. Here we go. Container info updated. So that's what we're going to create. So how did I create that? As the master deployed the web service, it was very easy for me to get on with it inside SharePoint Designer. As I mentioned before, if you're connecting to a database or a simple web service, you can simply use SharePoint Designer to create a new external content type. And as we have a web service right now, we can use SharePoint Designer. This is the one you've already seen. So let's create a new external content type. And this external content type will have a name. And the name will be live meeting container, for example. Then we have to create a data source. So let's head over here, add a new connection to a WCF web service. We can then enter the service metadata URL. It's very simple. We copy it from over here. Get the service description. Copy it from over here. There we go. The endpoint will be the URL to our service, and we can give it a name, live meeting container service. There we go. And right now there will be a new connection made to our web service, and with the WSDL being received, it will also get all methods that are available to us and all types that will be returned, in our case containers. So what we configure here is our data source, our backend data source. There we go. This data source has some web methods, so we can use these methods to implement the methods used by the business connectivity services. The BCS needs actually two methods. One is the read all items. The read all items is used to actually display a complete list, an external list. So the all items is used when we go to this view. And then we also need a read item, which can be used to get a single item, which is the view which is loaded over here. This one. So what we need to do is to define inside SharePoint Designer which methods to use for these actions. So we're first going to create a new read list operation, which we're going to use the get all containers methods for it. There we go. All simple configuring inside business connectivity services. So we map the ID to an identifier. And in this example, we'll also map the terminal name as an identifier. We have these two. there we go, and we already have our read list method. The other thing we're going to do right now is we're going to create a read item operation. And the read item operation uses input parameters. For terminal name, we're going to use terminal name. For ID, we're going to use ID input parameters, which gets the terminal, a container from a terminal by container ID and terminal ID. Result will be, again, mapped. There we go. When we finish it up, when we save this one, we already have a new external content type. And this external content type will be called LM container. We can now use this external content type inside SharePoint, and the end user will not even notice the data is coming from a backend data source. Well, there are two ways to create this new list. One is from inside SharePoint Designer again. When we get back to LM container, we can create a new external list from here. We give it a name, LM containers, which is the name for our list. And it will automatically create a new external list for us inside our SharePoint portal. We just have to wait a second. It's communicating with the web service right now. There we go. So the list is created right now. So if we go back to our site, we go to Development Portal, we'll see a new list called LM Containers. Again, these containers will be received using the Enterprise Service Bus, and it will receive these information from both Terminal 1 and Terminal 2. When we clean up our list over here and say, for example, we go and request item number 1, we'll see that the business rules engine will go to container terminal number 1 to retrieve the information from number 1. It's the business rules engine right now that will notice that the container is to be retrieved, container information from terminal 1. You can use SharePoint Designer to really extend your types. I've pre-cooked something, this one, the containers, and made a combination, for example, with Bing Maps. And the Bing Maps web part I created does not need any code. It can get the item from the current context. And you can work with these list items just like SharePoint list items. So it's very easy to integrate with my backend system right now. That's it for the demo. Head back to the slides. Here we go. So what have we seen? We've seen that Business Connectivity Services is part of the SharePoint Foundation, which is the basic free version that comes with your OS. And with Business Data Catalog, it was part of the Enterprise Edition. So you get a lot of extra for free right now inside SharePoint Foundation. BCS, you've seen me update my container, the minimum temperature from -5 to -10. It enables read-write operations to line of business applications out of the box. It also delivers a great client experience. As you've noticed, as soon as I had the external content type, it was very, very easy for me to create a new external list and navigate to that list, use the items inside that list, just like I would use any other SharePoint list. What's also very important is that the Enterprise Service Bus allows us to use some complex business integration. We actually send one request to the Enterprise Service Bus. It used business rules, it used an itinerary, it used dynamic resolving of 2 web services, somewhere in Rotterdam, one in New York, and it all integrates smoothly inside SharePoint. So if you team Business Connectivity Services and the Enterprise Service Bus up together, you really get a manageable business integration solution, and as far as I'm concerned, a very great client experience as well as a developer experience. But that's it for the presentation. Please feel free to add some more questions. We'll see if we can find the way to answer them. Let me have a look. I already have one here. It's okay to use the standard web services publishing wizard and then have BCS consume the ASMX instead of WCF. Yes, indeed. That's a question here from Mr. Scott Zimmerman. It is indeed very well possible just to use the ASMX instead of Windows Communication Foundation. You can use both. You can use WCF or ASMX. So that's not a problem at all. How did I create the link to Bing Map is another question here. And what was the steps? I created a simple web part. I can definitely show you the code or make the code available. It's a very simple web part with only a div and a little bit of JavaScript which is registered on the page. So it's just a simple web part, and especially with Bing, they're busy with the new version of Bing with Silverlight, and I think there will be some web parts available for Bing and then the Silverlight version for SharePoint pretty soon. I got another important question over here from Mr. Suresh. It's called, when do you use BizTalk ESB over BCS? Can you name some scenarios? As far as I'm concerned, in B2B, EIE, SOA, BPM scenarios, we take advantage of BizTalk. Well, if you do, I as a SharePoint developer, I can only say that if you do have BizTalk inside already, I would always favor to put BizTalk beneath the BCS. It's a lot more manageable, it's a lot more monitorable. So you would definitely use the enterprise service bus below your BCS. In some really simple scenarios, not enterprise, where you would like to create a connection to a simple database, a single database which is situated at the premise itself, you can use BCS. It's very easy to configure BCS and get a connection to your database. As soon as it's not on the premise, I would definitely use the ESB. Can you come again on the BEM monitoring? It's another nice example. I can give you a small demonstration about the monitoring inside BizTalk. If we head back to the demonstration environment, I've already created a sample page. Let's look at the side pages in which you can see how we connect to the ESB portal. This is one thing. You can connect to the ESB portal and first of all see all your faults, the alerts and some reports. In our case, we did have one error, for example, the dynamic resolution one-way messaging. The BEM activity monitoring, you can create your own rules for BEM, and then inside analysis service, a cube will be generated. And we can then use Excel services right inside SharePoint to read this cube and actually perform queries on that cube. Excel services is very, very good to get your data out of those cubes. So you can really combine the both together. I wrote a white paper together with Mr. Gijsenveld in which we explain how to use business activity monitoring in combination with Excel services, and a white paper is on MSDN. I hope that answers your question a little bit. Let's see if we have some more questions we can answer. Can we have the PowerPoint to use for future reference? You can download it as a PDF, I was told. So you should be able to have a button on the bottom where you can download the slides as PDF. If you cannot find it, we will send it to you. This Q&A log is being saved and will be handed out a copy for the questions we cannot answer. Another important question is all BCS available as part of Foundation, or just a piece of it and then the rest available in SharePoint Enterprise? I'm not a Microsoft employee, so all I have is the information I get from Microsoft themselves, and I was told that it's all part of the Foundation, all of BCS. So as I'm not from a Microsoft employee, I cannot give you any assurance on it, but I was told it's completely inside the BCS. We have some more questions.
If you wouldn't mind, I just want to jump in really quickly and let everyone know, yes, you can get a copy of today's presentation. Please go to the printer icon in the lower right corner of your screen to download a copy. And additionally to that, we will have the recording available on the Partner Learning Center and on Academy Mobile.
Okay, thank you.
If we don't have any more questions, Tommaso and Wesley, I think we should close this presentation. We are about 5 minutes from the close anyway. We give a couple of more minutes for any questions to come, and thereafter we can close.
Okay, very good. We do have some more questions, but I think these are questions we will be able to answer by email or as a comment to the online. So.
Great. In the meantime, while we're waiting, if there are any more questions, ladies and gentlemen, if you can now see the web page slide that's in your main viewing area, we would really appreciate your feedback. If you could take this time to please enter your email address to access the survey questions and just take a moment to fill it out. Be sure to click the Submit button at the bottom of the page to ensure that your feedback is received.
Yeah.
And again, if you have not done so and would like to submit a question, please go to the Q&A tab at the top of your screen, type your question in the window that appears, and click Ask.
Well, thank you everyone for your time today, and I would also like to thank Tommaso and Wesley and also Carly for arranging this. I hope you have enjoyed this as much as I did and found today's presentation so powerful, and it also showed how to use SharePoint and BizTalk together, how BizTalk can hide away the abstractions of complex integrations and provide a single interface for you to connect with SharePoint. And the demo that was so powerful just demonstrated that with a single point of complexity being hidden behind by BizTalk ESB, you can then use your SharePoint to provide the user interface for the users of the organization. So thank you everyone for your time today, and look forward to similar presentations in future. Bye for now.